And I'm going to bring on our next presenter here in just a second. Find it over here. And while I'm bringing her up, I also just want to remind everybody that Ovation was a generous contributor and was our title sponsor for the event today. So just again, another thank you to Ovation. Here we are. Perfect, Poonam. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
So excited to talk to you. Again, the mental health part of this is so important, and it's a piece that so many of us struggle with, and whether it's because we just don't want to share what we're going through, or we're embarrassed or whatever. So I appreciate you being here. So many questions about finding support groups and being a part of a support group. So thank you for your time. Just a little bit about Poonam. She is a licensed psychologist in private practice for over 25 years. She's a member of the mental health professional group of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, the ASRM, that we've talked about before with other presenters. She provides counseling for adults and couples and specializes in supporting people through infertility crisis. She also consults with intending parents, people that are trying to become parents or want to become parents, considering the use of third-party reproduction services, and conducts psychological evaluations of donors and gestational carriers. While Dr. Sharma is an adoptive parent, she believes that you need to decide which family building option is best for you and your family. And I love that because everybody's on a different journey and everybody kind of lands where they need to land. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. Okay. All right.
And I
So, on just for you guys to know, I'm on my end. I'm looking into a camera, so I have a little sticky note with a little face on it, so I can connect with something. This is a strange thing to present this way, but anyway, I'm happy to be here, and I have been supporting people who've been dealing with infertility for over 20 years. And what I want to do today is really take the information, what I've learned over that period of time, and share what I know about how infertility affects you mentally and emotionally, and the most effective ways to cope with that. Okay, so I'll just kind of jump in here. As all of you guys know, if you're on this journey, infertility affects many different areas of your life, and definitely look at the physical end of things. You're being examined. I mean, I was watching the end of the last presentation, and surgeries can be involved sometimes, or you're doing a lot of blood draws, meeting lots of different doctors, maybe injecting yourself with hormones. There's a lot going on physically, and all of that, I think, can lead to people feeling really vulnerable and feeling out of control. There's a lot of poking and prodding, and not everybody has a lot of medical experience. Like, they may not have been sick ever before, so that can be very stressful. And also, then, from an emotional standpoint, most people would not choose to be on this path. And, so there's a sense of loss. You and I were going to have our baby, we were going to build our family, and now there's all these other people in the middle of it. And that can be a bit jarring, can really raise anxiety levels. I see that a lot. And so, and I think, for many people, it can also register as failure, as weakness. And emotionally, that can be very, very difficult to metabolize, right? So, and I see, as I mainly see women. I mean, to the point of the prior presenter, most of the people I see who seek out support are women. I do actually see their spouses. Sometimes they'll come in to session with them. That's the most common way that I will see them. But for many people, it's the first time they've ever set a goal and not been able to achieve it. And so that can be very demoralizing emotionally. Right? And from a social standpoint, I think that isolation is one of the biggest issues. Um, when you look at your peers, some of them may already be moving on. They may have their children and they're moving on to a different stage of life. And so it's harder to connect with them without feeling pain yourself. And you may even feel guilty, right? That it's hard to feel 100% happy for people who have kids, because it's actually, causing you some pain. And I think even with your partner, there can be a pretty significant shift. Um, we may not know how to support each other through this, right? I mean, if you've not dealt with the health crisis, you guys may have different coping styles. You just may not click very well in the middle of all this. And then there's all the pressure on your sexual relationship, right? Timed intercourse is not very romantic, right? It's hard sometimes. To have that going on in one of the most intimate areas of your life. And then, of course, as all of you know, the financial aspect of things can add another layer of stress. You've got, trying to find the money for treatment if it's not covered, or even if you are able to get the funds, there's also this issue of if you're working, right? I mean, you're going to the appointments and trying to kind of keep yourself steady and not drop the ball at work while you're also going through all this stuff. So it's a lot. And I think for many people that ends up kind of leading to spiritual stress as well. I know that topic's being covered today, but really the sense of why me? This isn't fair. What did I do to deserve this? And it can feel like a punishment for a lot of people. It's very, very hard. So, when you look at the research on stress levels of people who are dealing with infertility, you may or may not know this, but the stress levels are considered to be about as high as somebody who is dealing with a cancer diagnosis or with some other type of medical condition that affects your, other aspects of your life. For example, like chronic pain that would leak into every area of your life as well. Or if you had HIV, in the past, that was a much more serious diagnosis. Still is, but more manageable. So stress levels are high. I mean, there's lots and lots of data on that, and it's important to remember that. Okay, and learning how to manage that stress, how to keep that in check, to me is the key to keeping you and your relationship strong and coming out the other end even stronger. Okay. And so when I was thinking about putting this talk together, I thought, well, I could give you guys a bunch of tips, and I'm going to give you some tips. But as I reflected on it further, I thought, no, I think it's really important for you guys to understand what goes on in the body and the brain when stress kicks in, because I think once you understand at that level, then you can come up with some of the strategies. You can add to the strategies that I give you. Okay. And so that's what I want to do. So I'm going to do a little bit of a neuroscience type of lecture, but I promise it won't be too complicated. I'm going to try to just give you the very basics so you know what's going on inside. So as I'm talking, just reflect on yourself. Think about, your body and your reactions. So you may or may not know this, but your brain is literally scanning for a threat, like looking for danger. Is this dangerous? Is it safe? Scanning for threat about 4 times per second. Okay. And the first time I heard that, I was like, what? That's a lot. I mean, like so it's basically in the background of your life is your brain scanning. And there's a technical term for this. It's called neuroception. And so it's literally looking for, is everything okay? Am I safe? Am I safe? Do I need to do anything, right, to keep us alive, right? And the brain scans in 3 places. And those 3 places are, first it scans, it's not necessarily in the sequence, it's doing all this simultaneously. It scans the outside environment. So if there's any threatening sounds or movement of some sort that may signal danger to you, it's going to notice that. And I had that happen. Actually, it's just a silly example, but I was in the bathroom yesterday and drying my hair or something, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move, and I thought it's some sort of an insect or something. And my body kind of jolted, and it was just a piece of hair that was on the floor that was just moving around, just my hair dryer was going. But, my brain picked it up. I wasn't looking at the floor. I wasn't looking for that. Okay? And so this is important because if you think about this past year with COVID and this pandemic, think about what we've all been picking up when we look outside. Okay. We've literally had, a virus that we're trying to make sure we don't get sick from, or that our loved ones don't get ill from as well. And so it's been some real threat, actually, some real physical threat. And there's also, along with that, it's just kind of, I think last year has been really, I mean, I'm a psychologist. I'm saying I think it was kind of insane, right? There's so much stuff going on TV, just all the political and racial strife, and then you got the economy. Some people are really, really struggling, some are not. There's lots of bad news, right? So if you're watching any of the news last year, and I know for my clients, everyone was in this place of just, oh my gosh, when is this going to end? Right. So we've all been a bit on edge because if you think about our brain scanning, it's picking up that stuff. So the second place that the brain also looks is actually scans inside the body. Okay, and all day long you're getting information sent up from your body up through your spinal cord into your brain, and your brain is tracking all that. Okay, and so if you've got an upset stomach or your heart's racing, right, or your breathing has shifted all of a sudden from being slow and relaxed to kind of faster, your brain's going to pick up on that. That's really, really important. From your jaws are clenched, you're feeling really tense. That's all getting registered. And then the last place that the scanning happens is actually in between us. Okay, in between from one person to another. And you might think, well, why is that going on? Well, it's because we're bonding mammals, and so our connections with each other are really, really critical to our survival. Okay, we think we're all independent. I think that's the big American myth. We're all independent. We don't need anybody. It's actually biologically impossible. We actually would literally die without being able to connect to others, and that's why in prisons sometimes they put people in isolation, right? And it's actually, I think, kind of torturous because it really is that deep. So, and where the brain scans is especially the face. So when I came on, you might have scanned my face, might have been looking for, is she friendly or not? Or, what's this person going to be like? Is she somebody who seems safe? That you're making those judgments very, very quickly. And we're most aware of them when we actually meet somebody new, because we really do kind of check people out and we get a gut sense of whether they're okay or not. Okay. So that's just happening on a normal basis, right? This is all the scanning is going on. Now, look at this through the lens of dealing with infertility, okay? And it's almost like put on some glasses as if you're looking at through a different lens here. And when you're going through infertility, I would say the odds are much higher that when your brain's doing all the scanning, outside, inside, and between, it's going to notice some threat, okay? I mean, outside, think about it. You are going into lots of unknown situations. You're meeting new doctors. You are dealing with, if you've never had any medical treatment, I mean, like everything is probably new. It's probably overwhelming. New staff, interacting with labs. You're getting all sorts of things done to your body, right? And then there's this constant threat of bad news coming. We're waiting to hear the results from the pregnancy test. There are points, or waiting for the doctor to tell you that, well, this option isn't available to you anymore. We're going to move on to other things. So, that's a lot. That's a lot of constant kind of stress there. And then even when you look outside in your life, you're on Facebook or, Instagram or something, people posting pictures of their babies and their pregnancies, those things also can trigger a stress response. And then, of course, inside your body, many people in this window are worried. They are physically feeling tense. You may be losing sleep. You may not feel so great. You may feel kind of crummy at times, and especially, when you are being treated physically, some of those procedures can be really uncomfortable. Some can be even painful. Okay, so there's some real physical threat going on there. And then, of course, between people. And I think when you're at a clinic, even things like, you may feel much more vulnerable, right? You're being examined. And so you're looking, at whether the person who's interacting with you, did they smile at you or not, or if you're waiting for a phone call, why is it taking them so long to call? All that kind of feels like a threat. Or someone's delivering bad news to you, but they're doing it in a kind of casual tone. I mean, your brain's going to pick up on that. Okay. So, why am I talking about all this scanning and giving you this lesson? It's because, well, your brain is constantly gathering information, and then it's making decisions based on that information. And when the threat level gets too high, there's actually a tipping point. So think about it like a scale. Okay, there's actually a tipping point where your body will force you out of sort of your normal operating mode into a survival state. You may have heard of this as being called fight or flight. Okay, but then when the survival state is triggered, all sorts of automatic changes happen physically and also emotionally and in terms of your thoughts and stuff. Okay, so when we're not in fight or flight, when we're not in fight or flight, we're calm and we think actually pretty clearly, and we're able to connect emotionally and physically. Our immune system's humming along. We're actually best able to protect against outside illness or outside threats when we're feeling, pretty good, and digestion's happening. And so there's a lot of great things going on. The body's being repaired. But the minute that we move into survival state, it's like pushing the accelerator pedal on the car. That's how I think about it. It's like pushing the accelerator pedal all the way down. Okay. It's great for getting out of a situation where your survival is actually threatened, but it's not great as a way to navigate everyday life or for navigating an infertility journey. Okay. And the problem is that that survival state is not just triggered when there's physical danger. It can also be falsely triggered when your mental stress is too high, because the parts of the brain that are triggering that response, they don't really think. I mean, it's like security guards see some danger, push the button, right? It's like that. And so there's a psychiatrist named Dr. Daniel Siegel. Some of you guys may have heard of him. It's pretty popular. But he talks about this whole process. And he has, I think, a really cool way of explaining the shift into that response, the survival response being triggered. And he calls it flipping your lid. And so what he says is that when we look at our hands, right, and we look at our brains, they actually look very similar. Okay, if you take your hand, like here's the brain, here's my brain, right? And here's my spinal cord, and here's my spinal cord coming down there. So it's a pretty good model. And he says that if you look at the hand, in the inside is going to be sort of your more primitive areas of the brain. These are what's in charge of survival. And on top, we have what we call the cortex, or the part of the brain where we do our higher level thinking. It's also what tells us to behave in social situations, or don't say that, that's not a good idea, right? So it helps us engage successfully from a social standpoint. And so, there's information coming in from the spinal cord all day long, and it's kind of going to these primitive areas of the brain. And, if the brain is noticing that the heart rate's up, the physical tension is up, and there's thoughts going on like, this is awful, I can't stand this is never going to end. Okay, think about it through the lens of someone in charge of, is this a threat or not? Okay, at some point when the threat level hits a very high point, you flip your lid. Okay, and flipping your lid means that the higher level thinking brains, a part of the brain, the part that engages other people, actually goes offline. Okay, and it goes offline because it's really not that important. How somebody feels about you, it really doesn't matter. Whether you can reason through some complex situation, doesn't matter. At that point, the only thing that matters is getting out alive. That's how it's processed. Okay. And so those lower brain centers are now in charge, and they're ready to deal with the threat. And so, your body's amped up. There's adrenaline and cortisol gets pumped into your bloodstream so that you can fight the threat or get away from it, right? So, and it's designed for short-term use, right? You're going to get through this and then you're going to go back to normal. So if you're about to have a car accident and, if we had to take all the time to reason through how do I get out of this, we'll already probably be hit and something bad could happen. So your brain's scanning and then it flips your lid, and now all of a sudden you don't know how on earth you saved yourself from being hurt, but you did. Okay, and that's what's so remarkable about that system. It's lightning fast. Okay, so the question is, what if your life isn't actually in danger, but you trip the survival system on with thoughts like it's all my fault, or that we can't have a baby, nothing's ever going to work, my husband or my wife's going to leave me because they won't be able to accept this. Okay. my whole life is going to be ruined. If that's the kind of stuff that's going on, there's a physical response to all that also happening. And so, when you're in that state, being in that state is not a good idea, right? When you're talking to your doctor, or you're trying to make decisions about treatment, or trying to have a discussion with your spouse, because you really can't engage like you normally would. So, because you can't think well and you're much more reactive. So it's really best to take a break and calm down, if at all possible. And when all those stress hormones are in your body, it takes a good 15, 20 minutes for all that to be taken back up, so that you can even be calm. So that's why getting away from each other can sometimes be good. So if you're triggering a survival state now and then, with your panic thoughts, not a big deal. Okay, not a big deal. I wouldn't stress about that. But if this is happening frequently, okay, when your life is actually not in danger, it's a sign that you're actually hitting your limits. Okay, and that's actually the big point I want to make here. Okay, if you're feeling scared, you're feeling uncomfortable, constantly feeling vulnerable, because your body is being taxed in this way, your response actually needs to be to slow down or stop for a while. Okay, and I know that may not be a popular thing to say, but really is an important thing in terms of making it through this journey. So the problem is, I guess the problem outside is that our culture says the opposite. Okay. I mean, how many of you have heard, just power through, or, you can do anything if you put your mind to it, or pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or just do it. Okay. No offense to Nike, but I use that example a lot. Just do it. Okay. How? I mean, that's really the question. Okay. So if you can't just do it, you may feel a sense of shame, and that you can't handle what's happening. So you may push yourself, even though you're feeling anxious, even though you're feeling panicked, even though you're dreading things and you're hitting a wall and you know it because your body is just so tight and just at some level screaming, don't do this. Okay. And I'm just going to tell you that it's really not a great idea, and it won't work if that's your primary strategy for managing stress. Okay. It's not really managing stress. It's just trying to act like stress doesn't exist. So the central problem from an emotional standpoint is that we really do have limits, and we have a certain bandwidth we can operate in physically. We can handle stress. I'm not saying, we're all wimps and we can't deal with this. We can handle stress. Some of it is actually even a little good for us. I mean, psychologists have a term called eustress, EUSTRESS. That's like the kind of stress that's stimulating, you feel kind of challenged, but it's not outside your bandwidth. Okay. But we can't just power through really hard situations that go on for long periods of time. Okay. Not without taking a physical hit of some sort, or a hit to our mental state, okay, emotional state. We're not made to do that. I mean, we're not machines. We're living beings. And, one example I often use for this is, if you were to let's say you have a dog and you're taking your dog for a walk. If it was hot outside and your dog's getting tired and all that, I mean, most of us would like stop and check on the little doggy. Are you okay? And I'll tell you a little story. My husband and I were taking our older dog for a walk one time, and he just got tired, And so what did we do? I mean, my husband picked him up and carried him all the way home, right? So because that's the kind of compassion we extend to our animals. Well, I think when I think about people, I think the more predominant model is taking that dog by the leash and dragging it down the road. Okay. Sometimes we don't remember we're also living beings, and we also do need to sometimes slow down. Okay. We're not cars. We can't have the pedal to the floor and not have any consequences because of it. Or even a car, you do that all the time, it will break down, right? So forcing things does not bring our best physically, emotionally, or mentally. Okay, and that's what we're trying to do, right? When we're talking about coping with all this, we want to bring our best into the situation because it's hard. And so we have to kind of navigate it very thoughtfully, carefully. So when I look at this whole situation in terms of, I think your central task during this window of obviously high stress is to create a bit of a safe bubble around yourself and only invite other safe people into that bubble. Okay. And because they can help you can actually draw from other people. Our connections help steady us and makes it much less likely that we'll flip our lid. Okay. And we know that interacting with a flip lid is dangerous, okay, because they're much more likely to be mean and disrespectful. And, you can't reason very well with someone who's in that state. We all know when we are interacting with somebody like that, because at some level we're going, how do I get out of this? This just doesn't feel safe. So you need your reasoning ability when you're navigating something as difficult and as complex as infertility. And we also know that long-term activation of the survival response is heavily taxing, okay, and potentially damaging to mind and body. So there's a physical reason for also doing this. You have to move at a pace that keeps things in the manageable range for you. Okay, nobody else can know what that range is. Only you know. Okay, because when you're in that zone, though, when you shift out of into a normal, calm zone, really great things happen. Right, your body becomes calm. You physically feel better. If you've had a surgery, your body heals faster when you're in that state. And treatment, you respond to treatment better. Okay, and you also, because you're feeling safe, things open up. Your mind opens up. You're able to see other possibilities. You may be able to see another way through. Okay. And your heart opens up. You're able to now connect with other people and listen to them much more deeply, be fully present. So that's why it's so important to not be constantly in a survival state. So when you're trying to figure out strategies for getting through all this, to me, the simplest framework I can offer you is just focusing on those three areas I was talking about, right? The brain scanning for threat outside, it's scanning in the body, and it's scanning interpersonally. And that's where the threat comes in. So if you can kind of manage the incoming, then you can shift things much more easily. Okay. So when we focus in on, let's say, the outside world, this is not the time to, go to a baby shower if you really, are feeling a sense of dread about it. I'm like, go hide out, do what you need to do. There's nothing to be gained by forcing yourself to go into a situation that makes you feel literally sick to your stomach. Okay, there's nothing to be gained from that. It's, to me, when I think about it as like putting salt on your wounds. It's really hurting you. Okay, so it's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to pull back. You may have to explain to people, especially really close people, that it's not about them. It's just that I'm just going through this. Try to educate them about what your experience is like if you can. Okay, but don't force yourself forward into that. And then in terms of the inside, really pay attention to your body. And I think in the United States, honestly, I think a lot of people are very unplugged from their bodies to start with. We have a very high pressure culture we live in, and we are really, the messaging is push through it. You don't need anybody, all that. That really doesn't help us. Okay, and so look for ways that settle your body. We all know what works for us, so you have to find individually. And when I talk to people, I often talk about the M's. I think one is Mother Nature. I know for me, if I can go outside for a few minutes and just stand out there, even if it's not doing anything, just take a few breaths, it's automatically calming. There's some interesting research, even watching a nature video for 5 minutes will actually help settle down. You don't have to be out there. It's that powerful, because it's actually our home, right? When we are living beings. Then also music, turning on music, or meditation, or for some people, movement. All those things shift the brain very, very quickly and help kind of settle things down. Okay. But anything else that works for you, talking to a friend, expressing yourself through a journal, doing acupuncture, breathing. I mean, it's the most fundamental thing we do. If you take a breath in and then just sigh and release, long breath out, if you do 2, 3 of those, you're going to feel a little calmer very, very quickly. So pace yourself. Okay, that's the main thing for inside. And then with our relationships, right? Connecting with people who are safe, safe as in we don't feel judged by them, feel like they really can just be with us without interfering too much. They help calm us. Okay, so surround yourself with people who make you feel safer. And, and this also applies to even your doctor. I mean, hopefully all of you guys feel safe with your doctor, but if you don't, I'm really kind of an advocate of, well, Find somebody where you can really relax, because otherwise you're going to be keyed up, and that's not helpful. Okay. Um, and if you have a good connection with your doctor, lean on them, right? Tell them what you need. If you can communicate things that help you feel safer in the interactions at the office, that's going to be helpful to them. And I'm also a big fan of, you guys may or may not know about Resolve. Resolve is the National Infertility Association. And I'm in San Antonio. I know we have, there's a chapter here. I think you guys in Austin same can connect with it. But the resolve.org, if you go to that site, you can find out where your local chapter is. And I know they offer all sorts of support. I mean, their website has great information, but there's also, I know here they're meeting a couple of times a month, and online during the pandemic, but in person during. So that can be a wonderful source of support, because that's meeting other people who are in the same situation as you are. And then, therapy. People sometimes also benefit from therapy, especially if things feel like they're getting out of hand, like out of control. Therapy can be a wonderful place to, process all that and figure out how to manage things better. So, in your the other relationship, of course, is really pivotal is the connection with your partner or your spouse. And I would say try not to engage them when you're, in an amped up state. We really, it does not bring the best out in us. We tend to assume the worst about each other, and we tend to get really mean and disrespect, much more likely to cross lines of respect. And that's when damage actually happens too. In a relationship, it's not when you have conflict, it's when that conflict ends up being ones where lines get crossed. So you really want to, if you know you're physically amped up, just see if you can just exit. Okay. um, and
I,
and so we want to be able to assume the best about each other, right? And
well,
so, for example, like one relationship issue that I see coming up a lot is women will often come in and say, we just had this failed cycle, or I just had this miscarriage, and my husband doesn't seem to care about it. He's like disconnected. Uh, you know, I don't know what's wrong, but it feels like I'm all alone. And if you ask the guy, what you'll actually figure out is that he is a little disconnected, but his disconnection is about he's kind of watching over her. He's feeling bad for her. It's hard for him to watch her suffering, and he's just trying not to add to her plate. Okay. And you would never know that unless there was some communication, and that communication will not happen until people feel safe. So,
awesome.
misunderstandings can happen. So.
I think Heather here just wanted to think that's really helpful information. Just my big takeaway is kind of take a deep breath, step back, and don't act in the emotion, because it's a big emotional roller coaster. So if we can take one big takeaway, I think it's whatever it takes to center you, calm you down, and step back until you can, rationally put your brain back in the game. I think is the big takeaway that I got from that. Can you give folks a way? How can they find you and reach out to you, if they're in the area or if you do virtual, so that we can honor you and
Yeah,
support?
I have you can go to fertilitycounseling.com. That's one of my websites. You can put my name in.com and you can find me there. Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find on the internet. I've got a lot of stuff out there.
Awesome. Well, we so appreciate your time. Is there one last tidbit that you'd like to leave folks with today?
I just would say, just be gentle with yourself. I mean, you're a human being trying to navigate a very difficult journey. That journey can be very hard, and so, be gentle with yourself. Pull people in to help support you, and just go at your own pace, whatever that is. Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much. We're so thankful that you took some time out of your day to be here with
Sure.
us, and look forward to working with you again in the future.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.